Hello, hello.
Hello, my friends.
How are you doing?
Oh man, I am so amped up and I'm so excited. If you guys are listening while you're walking today, get ready to pick up the pace because I am on a little cacao high right now.
Thanks to you, I am too.
I love it. I'm having such a good time with it. We should probably tell people a little bit more about that, right? Before they think I'm like on drugs or something while we're recording.
I did recently have someone ask me, like, what does that mean? Like,
Right.
that's some kind of, is that some kind of psychedelic or something?
Right. Fair question. Fair question. It is plant medicine. We should say that. It definitely opens up your heart chakra. But honestly, like from a plant chemical standpoint, it's imagine like if chocolate is over here and the plant that it comes out of the ground of is over here. For those of you listening, that's way far apart on the spectrum, right? Cacao is like super close to the ground, right? It's like one step away from picking it off the tree, right? Because when you pick it
Minimal
off the
process.
tree, it's super bitter, right?
Yeah.
So it's super bitter. And then what happens is that people super process it. And then that ends up being like, Godiva, right? So the Godiva stuff, not so good for you, like has some fun stuff in it, but cacao, like in its like raw is not raw cacao because there's a difference. It has to be roasted and it has to be processed in a certain way, but it's very minimal. But I will tell you, people always ask, is it like you said, is it a psychedelic or does it give you trips or anything like that? No, it absolutely does not.
But
It
it is,
does.
it is medicine and it has so many healing properties. I think, like you and I are massively enjoying, I've completely replaced it. I don't drink coffee anymore in the mornings.
Me neither.
And I think, the thing I noticed first when you started taking it was like the creativity spewing out of you. I was like, holy cow, what's going on?
I felt like I turned on a faucet, right? Like it's physical and mental energy. And when I tell you it's throughout the day, it is all day long. Like I don't get that 3 o'clock slump that I've had with coffee. I don't feel like I need a second cup like I do with coffee. And I still love coffee, but honestly, I don't crave it. I don't have a need for it. Cacao doesn't cause cravings. It gives you that energy, the endurance. And then because I'm so focused, I could like clear my mind, right? So I actually create like a little ritual out of it for myself, like that's my time to sit down and do my affirmations and my gratitude. And I do a lot of journaling. But while I'm there, it's like, I remember telling you, like, Juliet, I'm on the bullet train of creativity. Like, I
I
actually
think
had
you
to take
just
a
said
day off.
something. You said something really important too. That um, when you drink the cacao, like it is sacred, ceremonial. Like I don't just, like with coffee, is like I poured the cup, I mix in my coconut palm sugar, and I drink it down. With the cacao, like I sit in reverence of the cacao. I give gratitude, I set intention, and maybe other things would be different if I did that for them as well. But again, it is plant medicine. It is in many of the indigenous cultures, it is very sacred. And I think that's a big part of it.
I think it's such a great, I mean, you made such a great point just now, right? Like it is an absolute springboard to so many other things because yes, I do want to kind of explain a little bit of the chemical stuff that's in it, the psychoactive compounds in there and stuff. And wait till you guys see how this ties in with our guest today. I'm dying to get her on, but in a second. But it the more you make a ritual out of what you're doing, the more sacred it all is, right? Like in another episode, we'll talk about my food gratitude practice, because I think it's just so special. But if we were to approach everything as ritual, as sacred, which truly it is, because what a privilege it is to be alive, right? Then I think that definitely adds to it. But Okay, so people ask what's in it? What's in cacao, right? So theobromine, I'm probably going to say it wrong and we'll get our guest to correct me later. Theobromine, it's not caffeine, but is similar to caffeine in that it causes that energy release, right? But then it doesn't give you the crash that caffeine does at the end. So it's like nature's version of it, right? Doesn't cause cravings. There's something called I'm gonna try it again. Anandamide. Ananda is derived from a Sanskrit word, and it basically translates into bliss. So it's the same thing that's found like in black truffles. Black truffles and cacao are the only two foods on earth that contain it. So it's kind of like when you eat a little bit of chocolate and it just physically makes you feel better. It's like that, right? And then there's this one I'm totally going to butcher, phenylethamine, if I'm saying that right, PEA. And it's they say it's the chemical that's produced when you fall in love. And honestly, like putting all that together, it's just, man, it just feels good. And it feels right. You know, it's not like, you know, like when you eat ice cream, like you're eating it and it feels good, but then there's like a layer of this is going to be bad later. Cacao doesn't have that.
No. Two things I want to say is first, someone somewhere once told me that chocolate is a gift from God to remind us of what heaven is like. And so obviously chocolate comes from cacao. So cacao is that gift from God for us. But the other funny thing is this, so we didn't talk at all about, like when we make the cacao in the morning, we also add some things to it. And one of the things that I think we're both adding to it is cayenne.
Yes. Be gentle.
And this morning, I got a little extra dose of cayenne in mine. It was like, oh, more came out of the shaker than what normally does. So it was a little bit hot today.
You know what? Maybe that's what you needed, right? Like
I suspect, well, and that was kind of my thought process too, was like, you know, I did the same thing, you know, it's in my little shaker spice thing. And I normally just go bloop and just the right amount comes out. And today I went bloop and it went, oof. And I was like, well, that was probably supposed to happen. And we'll see. Fortunately, it wasn't like a mouth burning experience, but it definitely was a little bit spicier.
It's a little warmer. It's just warmer. Like that's the thing, right? It's not like spicy per se, but it's just warmer, you know, and sometimes you need a little extra fire. So anyway, I love it. And I will give you guys a absolute shameless plug. Check the show notes because we're going to put in an affiliate link because I have turned into an absolute evangelist over cacao. Now, disclaimer, like read the website, check the directions, make sure you don't have a heart condition. Like, you know, if you're on something or if you have to take care of yourself, you should double check. So those ingredients are all vasodilators, you know, they're going to get your blood pumping. So just make sure you stay safe. But you know, it has absolutely changed my life. So
yay. Let's bring our guest on. All right.
I'm ready.
Welcome. Oh, you're on mute.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? My gosh, I want a cup of cacao so bad right now. And I can't wait to see the link because I'm totally going to buy some. I'm like, I was literally thinking as you were talking, wow, I need to get some of this. Like you do events as well, right? Up in the lounge.
Yes, absolutely.
I need to get up there.
As a matter of fact, I think in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a cacao ceremony at night in conjunction with a blue full moon. So it is going to be a very, very special night. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll come up to that and sip some cacao with you.
Oh, it's magical. It's magical. Mm-hmm. So why don't we have you introduce yourself? Because everyone knows you have a smooth voice. Let's tell them what you do. And like Julietta says, the magic that you do.
Well, okay. So I'm Arvizu. I'm a pharmacist, a PharmD, And I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 25 years, started my own company, CORELIFE Group. It used to be called RxCR Communications. I built a 7-figure company with that. And then really what I realized is that people wanted to get out. People would always ask me, how do I get into the pharmaceutical industry? And then I'm like, no. You want to break out and you want to become a pharmacist or a, an entrepreneurial healthcare leader. And so I created the podcast Corepreneur. And in its first season, 15 episodes, it hit 35,000 downloads. And now it's like this pharmacy network that I'm part of. There's just entrepreneurship blossoming everywhere. So I love to see that. I'm also creator of the CORELIFE Method, which is a little bit like what we were talking about earlier, when it seems like everything is going wrong, when there's crisis and time wasters and time stealers and all these events in our lives that force us to look on the outside to our circumstances, like the bank account is thinning and, oh my gosh, my dog just died, or this or that, or these things that break our heart or break our spirits. The CORELIFE Method helps you go inside, create life balance and life integration from the inside out. So it is for busy women leaders, really over a certain age, because after 45, 50, like we are, right? It's like we've been through a little more life. So, I think that's my magic right now. I'm helping other amazing women leaders, like the 3 of us here on the phone or the StreamYard and those watching, really create life integration and unleash their own core power from the inside out.
I love that, but it also gets me wondering, Graciela and I talk all the time about what limiting beliefs we had to let go of to get to where we are today. What limiting beliefs did you have to let go of to create all of that?
Wow. Okay. Well, I would say that question goes back down to childhood, when I would look at my mom and my brother. My dad died when I was 10, right? And these are my adoptive parents. And so they didn't have the same genetics. Later on in life, I met my birth mom and found out that there was entrepreneurship in my blood. But early on, like I did the Lucy lemonade stand, right? The peanuts, right? Remember when Lucy did her? So I could say I was an entrepreneur from the time I was about 9 years old. And when I was 10, my dad died, and I just threw myself into studies, etc. I loved business and economics and science, and putting that all together just seemed like something natural to me. And eventually, I would just, you get into high school and people say, what do you want to do with your life? My brother was a pharmacist. So I said, well, I want to be a lawyer. I want to do anything but what you do, right? So, and then they'd say, no. I want to be a cardiologist. No. I want to be, I want to be a nun. No. I want to go in the military. No. Like it was just always a no, right? I wanted to study French, not Spanish. No. So we get shaped by the family that we're in, because in some way, shape, or form, they're trying to love on us and protect us. But there was this thing that just kept rising up in me that said, there's something more. And I had, from the time I was 8 years old, I had nieces and nephews. And now I have nephews, right? Because I was 8, 9 years old. Now they're like 40 something, and I'm 50 something. And it's like, well, they're like, one of my oldest nephews, Al, said to me just not too long ago, he said, we thought you were just this crazy dreamer.
Oh.
And then you built this 7-figure company. Like, you really are the real deal. And I said, anybody can do it. You just have to believe. So when I found out that, like, my birth mom was like, oh, they run their own business. They pretty much live off the grid in Oregon. They've been there, done that. And that my great grandmother, when my great grandfather, I guess, died at sea with a fleet of his ships. He was an admiral coming out of Norway. And she started to make umbrellas in her basement to survive. So entrepreneurship became a woman's venture in my DNA, several generations back. And I truly believe that, we carry with us the greatness, but also the fears. And it's the fears, which I guess back to your question, Julieta, that's the limiting belief that we have to just move past all the time.
I love that you bring up like ancestral limitations, because I'm still at the moment practicing as a physical therapist, but I am not renewing my license this year, so my title will shift from PT to healer. And part of the reason for that is that so much of my work does not resemble physical therapy in any way, shape, or form anymore. And ancestral trauma is something that comes up often that people need to clear. And I think the really cool thing is that we are able to clear it for ourselves, which then clears it for, you know, everybody coming forward in our lineage. And but in my work, I'm almost always only getting to deal with those things that we need to clear out, but also recognizing that we get all these positive things from our lineage as well. So that's really cool.
And I love that really at the core you're talking about is that you went back to your authentic self, right? Like you knew when you were 9 years old that you loved science and you loved being an entrepreneur. Like you knew it, right? And then, like you said, you were shaped by all of these things. We all were. My story, guess what I wanted to be when I was 15? A photographer. I did. I wanted to go, you know, to back in the day, it was Ethiopia, you know, starving kids in Ethiopia. And I just wanted to go travel the world and take all these like time life pictures, you know, the Steve McCurry pictures and for National Geographic, right? Like that's what I loved. And I wanted to do all of that. And life kind of just happened the way that it happened. And I didn't. And it took 20 years for me to realize, wait a minute, didn't I want to be a photographer, right? And as soon as I found my authenticity, as soon as I acquainted myself with my own voice again, boom, the whole world just opened up to me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are such a good photographer. I can't even imagine a time when you were not. You're mine, and you know. So this is awesome. I mean, you're
no one else is allowed to take my photo besides.
I know, right? I have one other photographer who's really, really good, but she's in LA. So if I'm on that coast and you're not there with me, well, you know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, it still goes back to authenticity, right? Because, you know, I had a client the other day come and say, I want to have my picture taken, but I'm not really sure how. And I was like, well, I can't photograph you if you don't know who you want to be. So we're going to do some work first. And we jumped into what's it called? Danielle Laporte's desire map, you know, just to do something to like get those creative juices going, you know. Can you tell us a little bit about your foundation though? Because everything you listed wasn't everything. I know you do more.
Oh, I have more. So yeah, there's books, there's other things. So I do have a second podcast coming out, which is actually going to support the foundation that you're talking about. So in 2020, I was not feeling very well. And I had maybe from 2019 to 2020, I was just taking a nosedive physically. And I just thought it's menopause. I went into early menopause. So going into menopause starting when you're 36 is really hard. It was so severe. So I had my first gynecological surgery. I had an ovary removed when that had gotten so big. It was a thecoma. And I had that removed when I was in 2015. And then, you know, the doctor at the time, you know, he was like, well, I think it's time you have a total hysterectomy. And I wasn't ready for that. And I had struggled with infertility and it just wasn't what I was ready to do, to lose my uterus, right? This is part of our feminine creative power. But I can tell you that you have that power inside of you, whether you have the body part or not, because it's not part of our spirit. It just is something that there was a letting go of. So in 2021, after the pandemic and then being shut in and all the stress of that, in 2021, I got a phone call from my doctor who removed a small polyp from my uterus, and I was in utter shock. I thought she's just calling because she was just the best doctor ever. And she was like, how are you doing? And I was laying in bed going, I'm being the best patient. I'm sitting here reading. I'm not at work yet, right? And doing all the right things. And she said, I'm so sorry to tell you. And I'm so glad she chose these next words. She said, the polyp was cancerous. So for me, in my mind, it became this thing and it's coming out. And then just dream after dream and the fact that I was a global medical information expert, recognized someone who's been on the teaching circuit in pharma for many years, that knows data, that's hired pharmacists and physicians and PhDs under her. Like that's my jam. So immediately I started looking at all the data and I went in just armed with journal reports and articles because the initial diagnosis was phase 3B, and that was not very good. So just one thing after another happened for me after that diagnosis, and it was miracles and synchronicities. And I just let it go, saying that this is not something happening to me. This is something happening for me. This will be part of the stories, my next book, etc. And so when I started feeling better after that total hysterectomy, I gathered a team of people, and I created the Endometrial Cancer Foundation. And September is Gynecological Cancer Awareness Month. So we're still tinkering with some back ends on the website, which is endometrialcancerfoundation.org. But you'll start seeing some posts out. If you follow me on social, you'll start seeing some posts out that try to educate women. And I'm doing this all on my own. I've gotten very, very little support from Pharma. We applied for 30 grants last year, got 0. I even lost money by paying my team to post on Giving Tuesday. So it's been a very, very slow start. And I literally, this is a lesson in detachment, but I literally pulled the needle off the record this year going, that's it, I'm done. I had to disconnect from the board, etc. And then checks started. You gotta be kidding me. I mean, literal checks, like paper in the mail. And they were going to, I have an LA address because in California is the number one state that I was born there. And that's the number one state that endometrial cancer occurs in. And the number 2 state is Florida. So as a Floridian, I have now jurisdiction in both. I got my 501c3 and I have certificates of authority in both. So in addition to my business, I'm doing that. And I've had to put it in its certain place. So anybody who wants to start a nonprofit, realize that should be 10% of your giving, right? You make profit to give back. And so that's kind of where I've reorganized, because last year got really busy in starting that up, but now it's kind of back to my CORELIFE Coach Institute and my books, etc.
Wow. And then I'm just going, what is it that it's California and Florida? Like, what is the connection there?
Right. We have some of the top cancer centers in the country. And maybe there's a reason for that, right? We have higher incidences. It could be population based, especially in the counties like Broward and Miami-Dade that we live in. I also live in Monroe County. And it's not okay. We have to prevent, we have to protect women's health and prevent. So my second podcast will be starting. So I'll give you just a little sneak preview. It's going to be called Peach Pit Jam with Dr. Ann, because endometrial cancer is the peach ribbon. And I want it to be as well known as that other ribbon that everybody knows in October, the pink one, right? Everything's drive pink, everything's this, and I can't believe that there's just every gynecological cancer awareness month. There's 5 gynecological cancers, and endometrial cancer is the number 1. And people are like, what's an endometrial, right? Yeah. It's the lining of your uterus. They don't even know their own body parts as women.
Well, because you can't see it from the outside, unlike the pink ribbon one, and everything associated with that.
Yeah.
So, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think the universe has been waiting for you to arrive. I'm sorry that you went through that, but I feel like the universe needed you to take this on, right? I mean, you are going to be and are the voice of it, right? Mm-hmm. To bring it. And I love that you have such a deep science background, because it just adds so much more. You can come at it from so many directions. And it's a great question of why California and why Florida. I know California has a lot of other protections in place that Florida doesn't. But still interesting, right? So that there's, we talk a lot about the blue zones. Well, I talk a lot anyway. You're familiar with them?
Yes.
Right. And it just always goes back to lifestyle. As a matter of fact, I think Netflix is coming out with a Blue Zones special now soon, like in the next couple weeks. So that's going to be movie night at the studio. I'm going to have to cram it in one day. I literally serve the Blue Zones wine here. Like, that's how I love it. But we really do have to take care of ourselves. We really do have to be very mindful of what goes, you know, in our bodies.
In our bodies and on our bodies, right? There's a great app that I just recently heard of. It's called Yuka, Yuka, and it's got a little carrot on it if you download it on your phone. And you can put products that you use on your body or that you take, like, and it'll tell you this shake mix isn't good, but it'll give you a better alternative. So all those kind of things. When I went back for, I think, my 2-week checkup after my surgery, I was doing so well. My doctor looked at all the scars on my belly and he was like, wow, I'm such a good surgeon. And I'm like, no, I drank wheatgrass every day, right? Like I got my B vitamins in and I'm healing my own neuropathic pain that is caused by lymph node removal. So I knew some alternative things to do. And there's pharmacological intervention and we're grateful for that. We don't want to be without an antibiotic if we're in a hospital in a dire situation, but there's abuse of medications too. And as a pharmacist, my absolute number one, they used to call me the herb girl years and years ago, because I'm also a certified herbalist and all that. And as one of the original integrative pharmacists, my thing is non-pharmacological intervention, right? Let food be thy medicine, right? We all take the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. And pharmacist comes from the word pharmakon, which means poisoner, right? It's like I am doling out something to you in a tiny amount that's really a toxin. So we want to take as little of that stuff as possible. So if there's like cacao with bromine and all these good things, which is a precursor to, you did so good, Graciela.
Thank you.
That was awesome. And that, precursor to your own innate caffeine, like it actually makes caffeine in your body, that first one. And then the third one you mentioned, like that is it's like a dopamine receptor, and like it just, boom, it hits your dope. It doesn't give you higher levels of happiness or anything in your blood. It'll give you like a rush of happiness in your brain. So if you're going to be able to hit that with something, that's why people get sugar addictions and alcohol addictions and other things that, fine in all moderation, but little bits of moderation, right?
Right. Well, I will tell you, even as an ADHDer, right? Like I keep telling people this must be what it's like to be like on Adderall and Ritalin. Honestly, like I have no idea. I've never taken any of that. But I'm kind of curious to have my kids try it because my son is pretty ADHD, and it's like that high of hyper focusing for sure. I'm that person, like 2:00 in the morning, I can start a project and I won't even notice what time it is because I'm so hyper focused. Everything is so much more leveled out now with cacao. Now I'm like, hey, I really want to go to sleep at 9:00, not 2:00 in the morning, because I want to get up at 5 so that I can have my cacao, focus time, So it really has been a game changer. So
Awesome.
You mentioned books earlier. We are building our goddess library. It is my hope and mission to one day have a physical space where all of the goddesses can come and just read and spend time. And I want to know what books or book you'd like to add to the library. And I know it's tough because you've got your own. So feel free to let us know.
Okay, so can I talk about my own for a sec?
You can talk
Am
about
I allowed to do a shameless plug? Okay.
It's our podcast.
All right. So I guess the first one I'll mention is Affluent Minds, Core Expressions for a Rich and Wonderful Life. And you can get it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. And I think that really when we first got on this morning and we're doing our own chit chat together, I realized a couple of things, that there's a paragraph in my book that I'd love to read to you real quick. It's called The Company We Keep. Right now I'm in some beautiful heart, soul-spaced company. And that's so important for us because just what this one sentence says, we all have them. The naysayers, the pull you downers, the energetic manipulators at work or at home. Are you listening to them or are you listening to your inner guidance? Are you listening to those naysayers and the pull you downers around you? Or those who pull you up and say you can? Being affected by others is one of the primary reasons that in times of stress, that the people around us become a source of friction. We have the choice to pull from the font of core values and emotions that give us power, We have the choice to become the thermostat, not the thermometer, so that we set the temperature of our atmosphere.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So I wrote that book in 2020 because I saw such a lack of leadership. And the second edition of it is coming out. And I wrote in the book pretty much also that I needed to copyright, which if you go to my website, arvizu.com, you'll see a wheel. And that wheel is the CORELIFE method. It represents the CORELIFE method. So it looks like this. And it's a very new kind of life balance wheel. And that has been something that came to me in 2009. We were talking earlier about chaotic times. Like if we ask our listeners, how many people have been through a little bit too much life lately, right? We've either gone through what I call the 3Ds, the death, the divorce, something that is really just decimating our lives right now. And we're going through these hard situations, and they could be a one big thing, like a spouse dies, God forbid, right? Or a dog dies, and that hurts your heart. How does that affect your business? So talking about work-life balance, we live in this too much, too fast, all the time world that the one crisis can just throw us completely off kilter. So this is not your normal linear life balance wheel. We live in a three-dimensional world, right? Newtonian physics, the apple falls from the tree and hits the ground because we have gravity. It's a law. But we don't live by that if we're a spirit soul being, that is all going to go away when this body fails us, which it will, sadly, right? Everybody's going to have their expiration date. Mine's not today. So until I expire, I want to inspire. And we can only be inspired from the inside out, from our true core. And core is an acronym for me. It means, right, the chaos, overwhelm, resistance, and exhaustion of our world, that's the negative core 4, needs to be countered by being centered, open, resilient, and energized. And that's what this method does for people.
Love that.
Thank you.
I can't tell. Last week, I had so many conversations with clients in here about how we just go. Like that wasn't the norm when I was a kid. You know, my dad was an engineer of a stainless steel factory. He came home. We had dinner together as a family, like every night. And we just sat around and talked and interacted. And, you know, on the weekends, we did things as families. And now it's everybody, you know, even when there is family, it's like running this kid to that thing and that kid to that thing. And no one's actually really spending any quality time together because everybody's constantly running. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not okay. And, you know, I do think that the pandemic taught us a little bit about slowing down, but people are forgetting it already. Yeah. And we really need to get back and embrace that. And because that's not living. It's just like constantly running. Mm-hmm. And I do think, you know, people like to criticize, you know, Gen Z or whatever's coming up that they're lazy and they don't want to do anything. And I'm like, I think that they're there to remind us that we don't need to be doing everything all the time. And we do have all this technology that's coming in that hopefully can do a lot of the stuff for us. We can stop doing all the time and start being, and being in community with each other. And
it's hard. Whatever happened to the lazy, hazy days of summer? Like when I hear, oh, summer, it's so, you know, relaxing. I'm like, since when? Like, I don't remember that for like the past 10 years.
Yeah, entrepreneurs don't have summers.
Intentional. You have to be intentional about getting rest. Like Graciela, you said you took a day off recently because you're so focused.
Yeah.
It's important.
I will tell you that, you know, I've been through a lot of guilt with like, do I, you know, because when my kids were little, I would put them in after school things. And now we just don't, you know, they're 14 now. So they're much bigger and they kind of have their own wants and needs and things like that. But we spend so much more time together, and I'm really seeing how they are interacting with the world, and it's so much healthier. Like it's so much better. You know, my kids have none of the things that I feel bad, but a lot of like the regular school kids have, you know, about who's bullying and what color shoes are you wearing today? And, you know, do you have the brand name, whatever? Like my kids are completely oblivious to all that. So cool. I know, I feel like I have them in a little cocoon. And believe me, they're experiencing plenty of life. They're not missing out. But you know, they anyway, it's just really, it's been very interesting, and it's been good to know that we can create our reality, right? Like that's something we talk about all the time, is creating the life that you want by being your authentic self, you know.
Yeah.
So it's getting time for us to wrap up, but I'm just wondering, you've dropped so many gifts for our audience, but do you have one last parting gift you'd like to leave with our audience today?
Oh gosh. Well, going back to the title, it's the word affluence, right? And affluence, if you were sitting at a cafe, I wrote in the book that you would probably overhear someone talking about affluence, you would think that that person is rich, and they might be, right? But that's not it at all. The archaic definition of the word is about flow. And it's about, again, being in flow, and being in flow from the inside out, right? So people say all the time, put God at the center of your life. Well, what does that even mean? When you live from your core and your true extreme power, and you are guided and led, and you see the miracles around you, and you are just unashamed to be able to talk about that, when, you know, sometimes our world can like live in a little science box, especially in my world, right? A very scientific box. And I've brought this into major corporations and saying, how can you be more empowered, right? This is what is, if somebody can dream something, they can do it. That's the old phrase, right? So I think would drop that on, if I could build a business like I've done, and a nonprofit, and all this, then if you have, you know, the whole corepreneur thing is build your business, balance your life, and leave your legacy. You can do it. You're the only thing stopping you. So don't let limits define you. Don't let age or weight or whatever define you, right? We're not the perfect mini goddesses we used to be in our 20s, okay? But we're pretty awesome. And yeah, you two are amazing and beautiful, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Beyond. I'm always so excited to see you and to see your face. If you guys are listening, go hop on YouTube so you can see this woman's beautiful face. I love so much everything that you contribute and everything that you're doing in the world. And it is our pleasure and honor to follow everything that you do. So we are grateful.
Thank you so much.
Love.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for listening. And I want to wish everybody a magical day.